Hello, I'm Professor Lieu. Welcome to our live stream. Today we are going to be showing some featured entries from the September Art Dare, which was to design a movie poster in the style of designer Saul Bass. If you would like to grow as an artist and you can't afford an art class, we've got everything you need here at Art Prof: critiques, tutorials, and professional development. To jog your memory a little bit, we asked people to choose a movie or several movies during the month of September and to take a look at designer Saul Bass's classic movie posters. I think you can see from looking at some of the examples that really what Saul Bass was known for was very bold shapes, very minimalistic images. And so we asked people to design an image that had no more than two colors on top of black and white. Really interesting set of parameters, very limiting in terms of what you could actually use. But I think you guys will see that people really stretch their wings quite a bit to make those parameters work for them. All right, the first artist who we're going to look at is Johanna. And Johanna decided to do a movie poster on the movie Ready or Not. I actually have never heard of this movie before. That was sort of the fun thing about this art dare, is seeing familiar movies, but also hearing about ones that I had never heard about before. And so looking at Johanna's poster, in their artist statement, they explain, Johanna says, I did a few sketches, found my initial pieces too focused on the movie's main heroine, which makes sense. I mean, if you look at the movie poster, that's pretty much what they focused on. It's actually really cool to compare the movie poster that was used versus the ones that you guys designed, because it's such a different take. So what I did for this stream is I have the original movie poster, so we can look at that in comparison to the ones that you guys actually ended up deciding upon. And so Johanna says it felt essential to have that blocky handwriting paired with a spoiler embedded in the actual text itself. I don't know what the spoiler is. If you guys have seen Ready or Not, let me know if you're familiar with this movie. And Johanna also says, I love the use of the block-like hands and limbs in Saul Bass's posters. Tried to bring my own version of creepy-looking hands to increase the creepy factor of drawing a card of doom. Yeah, I mean, those hands are bold. And you know something? This is a really minor thing that maybe you don't even notice, but I actually think was one of the most impactful decisions that Johanna made in terms of composition. And that's the fact that the card that the hand is holding, it's just a little bit tilted. Not very much. You almost don't notice it. But in my opinion, that really makes the composition because it has a little bit of that slight motion. So it offsets something that would normally look too stable and maybe a little bit too static. So Johanna, really great job on that choice. And then I also like the little details, like for example, the ornamentation that's in the corners, a little bit of that, I guess, grit that's underneath the hands, some really nice decisions. And then the fact that the text is a little wonky, but the thing is, I really get the feeling that it was done that way on purpose, that it's not supposed to look nice. It's supposed to be a little bit creepy. At least that's my impression. But yeah, I think great job, Johanna, with this composition. I think it really definitely packs a big punch when you start looking at it. Okay, the next artist we're going to look at is Eric E. Lee. And Eric decided to do this movie, which again, I have not seen this movie. Tell me in the chat, have you seen A Quiet Place? I guess Emily Blunt is in it, and I think John Krasinski. I haven't seen a movie in forever, you guys. I mean, other than the Michael Fassbender movies, I just don't get out that much. So actually, there's a lot of movies here that I've never heard about before. But this is called A Quiet Place. And if we go in and we take a look at Eric's piece, you'll see that they decided to create this piece using this brainstorming process. And so Eric explains, my brainstorming process started with rewatching scenes from the movie while sketching ideas, symbols, and characters out on paper. That's such a great way to do it, like actually watch the movie and take visual notes at the same time. I think that's brilliant. And actually, this is really cool. Eric explains that this is a movie that their dad and them enjoyed watching in the theaters. They've been waiting for the release of the upcoming sequel ever since. So yeah, cool. And so Eric also says after doing the thumbnail sketches, they started working digitally. And Eric says, I chose a black background to emphasize the eeriness, silence in the film with red details and texture to tie in the horror aspect of the movie as the theme of familial love. Well, it's so interesting, you guys. If you look at the original movie poster, I feel like this one does not look quiet. Like it's sort of got that really nerve-wracking horror movie poster, which is, I guess, what it is. But what I really like about Eric's piece, it just feels very elegant and it does feel quiet. And honestly, you guys, one of my favorite parts of Eric's poster is the way the hand towards the wrist dissolves just a little bit. It does it so slowly that it really does have this silence to the way design is done, which I think is really great. Yeah, like Emma is commenting, I love the texture, how it fades away, super fitting. And Tom G says, I love the lips against the black. Yeah, you know what's cool about the lips? You don't notice them right away. The first thing you see, because of the high level of contrast, is the hand. And then you begin to notice the mouth when you start to look a lot closer. And so that's what's kind of fun about a lot of these movie posters is that while there are sections that are bold and that definitely stand out, there definitely are areas that take a little bit more time to understand. Oh, and cool, Eric is live with us in the chat. I'm so excited that you can join us. And Dara says, yep, there's no visual noise. I know, I sort of feel like the movie designers, they should have taken a cue from Eric's, because I feel like Eric's version just has a lot more space for you to think. I feel like the other movie poster is just a little bit too blatant. So I think that's great. And good comment from Lisa H about how the font works for the poster, because I think that a lot of people think fonts are not that difficult to do. Oh, you just pick one and it looks fine. I actually disagree. I think picking the right font, placing it well in conjunction with the image is actually very difficult to do. So that is not the easiest thing. It's almost like invisible work. Like when it's working well with the fonts, it's like you don't even notice. But when it's bad, oh man, it can be bad when people are not thinking through the font. So great job. Yeah, Mo is saying, great job, Eric. You represented the movie very well. And W315 says, I really like the shadow on the pinky side of the hand. Yeah, some really nice lighting, which I imagine definitely plays a role in that movie. Okay, so the next artist we're going to be looking at did 10 Things I Hate About You. And this is by AKA. And so if you guys haven't seen this movie before, Heath Ledger, when he was really, really young, this is an old movie, and Julia Stiles. And basically AKA describes how they chose the color changes in the lettering to symbolize basically this relationship, which is like hot and cold, on and off again, that happens between Heath Ledger and Julia Stiles. And so AKA explains the figure in the top references the scene where Heath Ledger's character performs a song in the stadium to apologize to Julia Stiles' character while dodging the security guards. It's been so long. I saw this movie, it was so long ago that honestly, like, I can't remember anything that happens, but I don't know. It was charming, I suppose. And so, yeah, and also AKA did Interview with the Vampire as well. I remember this movie when it came out. Everybody was so furious that Tom Cruise played Lestat. Tell me in the chat if you guys remember that moment. People were just scandalized that, oh my goodness, Tom Cruise is a vampire. It was like such a big deal. Oh, and wonderful AKA is live with us in the chat. And they're explaining it's a cringy movie now, but I loved it as a teenager. I suspect most teenagers did love it. I mean, what's not to like, you know? All right, so let's take a look at AKA's design based on Interview with the Vampire. And I'll tell you, I love how succinctly this visually sums up such a complicated story because I sort of imagine with vampire movies, it's really hard not to have teeth everywhere and the costuming. It's really easy to get sucked into all of that. I think for a lot of people, that's sort of their first idea. And the thing is, the cassette that Christian Slater is using to record the interview, it's not really something you associate with that movie at all, because a lot of movies have certain objects or props that become very important for one reason or another. And I just love AKA that this is an object which absolutely is really an object that does sum up the film, and yet you don't really see this object during the film. So I really think that this was such smart thinking in terms of really trying to distill the idea of the film into a single image. John Murph says, do we even know what a cassette is? Well, some of you older farts in the chat better explain to the young people what a cassette tape is and the days of rewinding them. And oh my goodness, I do not miss cassette tapes, you guys, not at all. Yeah, like Tom G is saying, tape cassette is a great punch. Anna is saying, I love the design. It's amazing. And Eric says, love the inking and the font. Yeah, and isn't it cool that the cassette tape also has red on it? And so it really blends in with the blood. I think that's really, really brilliant. And so AKA explains in their order statement, they wanted to get this retro vibe, which is common in Saul Bass posters. And so they say, I veered toward scrapbook paper. I realized I didn't have the art supplies to do the puddles of blood and the cassette tape justice. And I wanted to reveal the thread of the story as simply as I could without using that, stereotypical sexy vampire angle used with the original movie posters. I mean, that's what's so fun about these, is that we really see people departing from the first most obvious literal response, which tends to be what a lot of movie posters are nowadays, because I suspect that they don't invest huge amount of time and artistic energy into that because it just is a different time period. People have different types of priorities when they're producing movies now. Moses says, I feel the blood could also be dripping just a bit. And this is a great explanation from AKA the artist, waiting for a song to play on the radio so you can hit play at the exact moment to make your mixtape. Yeah, you guys today who are making playlists, you do not understand what it took to make a mixtape. Now that is like hardcore, you guys, okay? Yeah, like Dara is explaining this really well, that the mixtape was a sign of a true friendship, making a mixtape for your bestie. Yeah, that was the ultimate, you guys. Okay, the next poster we're going to look at is based on this film, The Wind Rises, which actually I've never seen this film before, but I think it is a Studio Ghibli movie. Tell me, you guys, if you've seen this before. And the artist is Amber Udon. And so Amber explains in their artist statement, I made the silhouette out of a newspaper collage, plays into the plot. It's set in World War II. And so Amber thought, okay, the newspapers are a form of media commonly associated with this period of time. And, I love, Amber, that you did real cut paper collage. I don't have anything against digital, but I have to say there's something about like that feel of the newspaper, the way a newspaper smells. It just is so distinctive. And it does, I think, harken to a different time period. I can't remember the last time that I touched a physical newspaper. So I think as far as the material goes, this is such a great choice in terms of saying something about the time period. Yeah, like Talia here is saying, newspaper type of art is really good to use here, especially with the contrast of colors. This one is just genuinely good. And let's see, W315 says, they used to be on huge sheets of paper. The person in the passenger seat would have to unfold it and tell you where to turn it to get it out of the way again. I know, the things that we used to do so many years ago, it's really hilarious. Yeah, and Prajay is saying, love how the word rises is incorporated into the plane. I know, isn't that brilliant? It's like you don't see it immediately. And then when you notice it, it's like, oh my gosh, that is the coolest thing. So yeah, in Amber's statement, they say they actually took a picture of the newspaper silhouette and brought it into Adobe Fresco to add the title. And so the vertical lettering is a reference to the wind rising. Word rises is within the geometric plane, referring to the protagonist's occupation as an aviation engineer during the war. So cool. And I think it's even cooler when people are blending different media. And you guys will see that throughout the stream, that a lot of people use some digital media, some traditional. I mean, it's like really, really fun. Yeah, Moonspark's really good point about the teal color, because I feel like it's a fairly muted color, but it makes sense to me when you think about the type of film it is. If that background was cadmium red, it would not quite be the exact same thing. So I just love that. Yeah, like Dara is saying, it adds a dimensionality that digital media doesn't have. And Moses says, I love the silhouette. Very, very cool, Amber. Okay, the next movie we're going to be talking about, actually, this next artist, Vernon Luna, did several posters. And that was the coolest thing, you guys, is that even though technically speaking, you really could just do one to enter the art dare, we had a lot of people who were extremely productive during the month of September. And Vernon was definitely one of them. So this was a poster based on the movie Fargo. And you can see here is Vernon's version of the Fargo film. And what I love about this is the fact that the letters are going upwards. That's a tricky thing because, you know, sometimes if you do vertical lettering, it can make the poster illegible. And that's a problem. Like if you have a movie poster and people can't actually read the title, that's not going to work out so well. But I think, Vernon, you really took advantage of the fact that the movie title is so short. And so you really were able to do that. But you know what my favorite part is, you guys? The way that Vernon put Ethan Coen and Joel Coen, it's like embedded into the O. And it also curves the way that the O curves, you know? And that's an area where there's no visuals. And that to me is such a wonderful, just subtle moment. And then the integration of the body, like smack on top of the F. Really, really nice choice. Yeah. And also, just to point out, Tom says, I love the reverse F. And Moonsparks says, fun fact, you can see a gun in the letter G. Oh, Moonsparks, you are the artist. Okay, very cool. Sorry, I can never remember the usernames from YouTube onto Instagram. It's always really confusing. And Talia is saying the actors' names are on the inside of the O. I think they're the directors. I think Frances McDormand was one of the actresses in there. And Soy Tainley says it'd be cool to have the wood chipper in a poster. And Emma says, I love that the body is the A. That's so well done. Yeah, this is a very beautifully designed poster with so few elements, and yet it really communicates a huge amount of information. Okay, this is another film that Vernon did, Midsomar. Oh God, you guys, tell me if you saw this movie. I really wish I hadn't. Like somebody, oh, actually it was Eloise Sherrod who recommended this movie to me because I was like, yeah, here's the thing, this movie was not scary to me. Like, I know everybody was like, oh, it's so disturbing. I'm like, I just felt apathetic when I watched this movie. I don't know. Anyway, let me know if you guys saw this movie because, yeah, that was an experience. I don't recommend it for people under the age of, I don't know, it's probably rated R. It's got to be. So anyway, this was such a cool poster, I think, because the movie itself, I mean, the whole premise of it is that it, quote, looks all pretty and flowery and very fun with people frolicking in the fields. And yet it's got this very dark undertone. And honestly, Vernon, my favorite part of this poster is the background, like the way background, that like very light gray shape almost feels like this darkness that's looming over these figures. I think that's beautiful. I mean, it's lovely atmospheric perspective, really, really nicely done. Yeah, Lisa, who's a scaredy cat, I do not recommend this movie unless you can tolerate a lot. So I do not recommend this. Okay, we do have one fan. Alyssa says, I love Midsomar. Okay, I can sort of see that. Okay, that's cool. Anybody remember this movie? This is actually a pretty old movie. Remember when we thought this idea of reality TV was, so strange, and now it's like on TV all the time? This is an old movie called The Truman Show by Jim Carrey, where basically his whole life is on television, but he's not aware. And so he obviously finds out at one point, and all this chaos ensues. And so here's Vernon's version of The Truman Show. And I just love, this is such a quirky poster. And I feel that there's almost a chaos to the rhythm between the letters, the shift, and then the tiny little letters in the lower right-hand corner that say lights, camera, action, and the upper left where it just says the. So this, I think, is such a cool poster because it does feel fairly chaotic. And that's sort of the theme of The Truman Show, is that things do get very, very chaotic. Yeah, like 10,000 Crows says Truman Show is one of my favorite movies. Oh, we have a lot of fans here of The Truman Show. Same with Talia. And so Tainley says, nice poster, Vernon. It looks very professional. Yeah, very cool. Yeah, it's got a great vibe, you guys. Tom says, The Truman Show makes me nervous at the mirror every morning. And AKA says, I love the camera and the wires. I know, it's like, I feel like a lot of these movies, they're all about faces. I mean, of course, with actors and actresses, that's one of the things that gets people to watch movies. But the fact that a lot of people were not reliant on human faces, I just thought was such a great move, that people really tried to find not the most obvious first choice, but people dug a lot deeper than that. Because I think a lot of times, if you don't do the brainstorming, you do end up with the most cliche literal version. And yet I think you guys can see everybody really went beyond that. Yeah, it's a great comment from Anna, who says, I watched this movie in high school, love the absolute chaos it becomes. And Talia says, this movie made a phase in my life when I thought I was being recorded, but the vibe of this poster is just really good. Very cool. Okay, so the next piece we're going to look at is Donnie Darko. I never heard of this movie before. I feel like I should, but anyway, tell me in the chat if you have seen Donnie Darko, because Vernon also did Donnie Darko, but Vernon did not stop there. This is the coolest thing, that Vernon actually did 3 different versions of Donnie Darko. So this is the first version, this is the second version, and then this is the third version. And so this is so much fun to get to see what are some of the differences. And I think you guys will see that getting to see the 3 different versions, like you really start to understand why text is so important. Like I bother my students all the time. Like I say, look, you guys can't just make the image and then slap on the text at the last minute. And that's what I really like about this piece, Vernon, is that it's so clear to me that you're not just putting the text on there. You're really asking yourself, how does the text relate to the image below? So you can see when the letters are like bright white, the relationship completely changes between the title and the figures, because here the figures seem like they're normal size. But isn't this cool to see how now, because the text is huge and it's totally filling the space, the figures feel tiny. And so it's so interesting to see how the shift of text really impacts the way we see the rest of the piece. This is great. Vernon is saying, I can't really choose between them, so I included them all. You know what? That is always the way to go. I think that if you have too many, you can always cut back, but you don't want to show up and have people saying that they want more. So I think this is a great way to work, Vernon, and keep it up, because wow, you were very productive. Dara is saying, I can't tell if it's a horror movie or an acid trip movie. I don't know. I mean, I don't know what the rabbit actually means, but it's pretty interesting. I suppose I'd have to watch it. But anyway, I just want to include a little bit more what Vernon says, that they played around with uncommon colors, negative space, and Vernon explains this art dare for me is a voyage of finding new things and incorporating them into my future works. Yeah, that's what's so nice about the art dares. It really is a chance to take a vacation from yourself. Just Try something, and to not have a lot of commitment because you know it's done at the end of the month. So that's kind of a nice thing about the structure and the way that things get done. Emma is saying, I love your versatility. You've done so many styles throughout your posters. Each feels like it's been really pushed to the best it can be. And Ranuk says, these artists make me proud of the decision to never even thinking of participating, let alone being featured. I'd have gone into depression seeing such talent. Well, you know something though? I think what's been really fun about these art dares is the way people really have supported each other, that you guys are watching other people progress. And I really do think people are bouncing off each other in such a positive way. Tell me in the chat, if you did the art dare, whether you're in this video or not, if it's helped you to get to see how other people are doing it, watch people progress. I think it's so much fun. I mean, to me, that really replicates the classroom experience in a way that I haven't seen so much in other places online. Okay, so the next movie we're going to take a look at is Terminal. And the next couple slides that we're going to look at are all by Rose Weisberg. Sorry, I don't know how to pronounce her name correctly. But Rose was very productive, similar to what we saw with Vernon's piece. And I've never heard of this movie before. Tell me in the chat if you guys have seen this. This is Terminal. And Rose explains, takes place in a vintage train station, but there's also a character who has a terminal illness. And so that's an example of some of the duality in the movie, and characters are not what they seem. I think this is gorgeous. The glow that's coming from that purple, the way it rises upwards. And you know something, you guys? You may not be able to see it so well in the video, but there are these like rabbit shapes that are in the background. They're really, really subtle. Like you're not going to see them right away. But Rose explains that the white duck rabbit is a symbol of how the characters create illusions to hide what they really are. And wow, Rose, you use so many different materials for all your posters. So Rose ended up using Affinity Photo, Affinity Designer, and the whole is clip art, and the duck rabbit is free SVG. I don't know what that is, but sounds really cool. And you got really great results. Really cool. Yeah, and Prajay is saying, this is my first art dare, and I agree the community was wonderful, very supportive and engaging. And Eric says, I love seeing everyone's different techniques and use of media. It's awesome to have such a supportive community. And this is great to hear from Johanna. The Discord chat definitely helped my work. Yeah, because that's one of the best parts of doing these projects is just seeing how other people approach it and getting ideas from each other. Okay, Casablanca, classic movie that Rose decided to execute in gouache. So let's take a look. And so Rose explains in their statement, to me, it's a story of love, not only between people, but a love of freedom. And it makes them cry a little bit every time. And so I guess Rose used a movie still into Affinity Photo, pumped up the contrast, printed out the title, and then ended up painting it with their own mixed color and gouache. And it's so great to see the integration of the text with the image. Again, like you guys see how that shape that is coming down the figure on the left, how it just slides into the sea. I just love looking at little moments like that topographical decision is so much fun to see. I'm going to give a shout out to 10,000 Crows. Thank you so much for the super sticker. We always appreciate your support in order to keep our content free and accessible to everybody. All right, next movie, Us, which, by the way, I'm sorry to say, I was disappointed in this movie. Who else got to see this movie? Like, I love Lupita. I don't know how to say her last name. And I love Jordan Peele's movies. I was like, oh, this is going to be so good. And I don't know, it wasn't as good as I wanted it to be. I don't know, maybe my expectations were a little bit too high. But anyway, this is the movie. It's a horror film. So if you don't like horror movies, I would definitely stay away. But gorgeous representation of this film. And so Rose explains in the statement that the piece has a lot to do with duality, with the scissors and the way the figures are attached to each other, their own shadows reinforcing the idea of duality. And so a lot more different techniques, Photoshop, Illustrator, Affinity Designer, and then assembling a figure out of the simple shapes. Yeah, beautifully done. I love the scissors. Like, you would never think you could get away with having a huge pair of scissors in between the letters. But Rose, you really pulled that off. Like, I think a lot of people wouldn't want to do that because they would think, oh, well, then people won't be able to read the movie poster. But I really think you did an amazing job with this. Let's see. Talia says, maybe the movie felt slow-paced, had an interesting idea. Maybe if it was a better attempt at it, would have been good. Okay, good. So I'm not crazy, because 10K also says that they were super disappointed. It could have been a lot better. And Moses, too, says the movie was a big letdown. I know, it's like it was almost good. Like, I really, really wanted it to be a good movie, and it just wasn't in the end. Sort of a bummer. Okay. And then we also have this other poster by Rose based on Soylent Green. We might not want to give away the secret in this movie. Tell me in the chat if you know what the whole Soylent Green secret is. And I think we're not going to tell anybody. I don't know. Although if you've seen that famous clip, maybe you already know the spoiler. I'd be curious to know how many people have no idea, because it is a pretty old movie, but it is really, really famous. So anyway, this is Soylent Green. And this is Rose's version of Soylent Green. And the movie, if you don't know about it, it's from the 70s. It's set in 2022. Oh my goodness, that's only in 2 years. Wow. I guess we're going to have climate change. We have that. Mass starvation. I hope that is not on a massive scale. Police control, government breakdown. And so we have these Soylent protein crackers at the top of the poster that come out of the factory in sheets. And so actually, if you guys look at this, what looks like mountains is actually upturned faces. Does everybody see at the very top? There's like this thing, it looks like mountains, but they're actually profiles of faces that are actually the Soylent Green is coming down on them. And, you know, even though Rose ended up doing a lot of digital media, this piece is actually colored paper, cut into squares with an X-Acto knife. And then the title was rubber stamped with gouache. I love this. I think that the topography, especially, like, it has that grid-like look, but it's also a little bit primitive and a little bit messy, which I think is perfect because the film is not about things being, in fact, it's all about the world being horrible. So anyway, you guys, yeah, it seems like we have a couple people that don't know. Eric doesn't know. And yeah, I know it's an old movie, but yeah, you got to warn people just so they don't know. Emma accidentally, I mean, you cannot Google this movie and not find out what the horrible secret is of this film. Anyway, you guys can check it out. It's a really interesting movie. Yeah, like Talia saying, I thought those were mountains, but the faces were a really good touch on it. And I thought this was digital. Oh my God. And Alyssa Mercado is getting ready for Soylent Green in 2 years. Yeah, apparently we're on the way. We got climate change. I'm sure Soylent Green is right around the corner. Okay. We have yet another one by a movie that I've never actually heard of before. It's called Wrist Cutters. And Rose explains it's a sweet and funny road movie set in a rundown B-grade afterlife limbo. And it's about, it gets manifested through a cassette player and a crappy car and 3 characters driving across the grungy desert landscape. And so what Rose ended up doing was setting the title, drawing the hand with a pen tool in Affinity Designer, and then clip art as a reference for the cassette, another cassette tape we have here, and then painting it with black and white gouache. So again, another version of so many different materials. I mean, Rose, I feel like, think about how many years of experience it took for you to get to this point to be able to use all these different things. Very, very cool. Okay, the next artist we're going to look at is, I'm sorry if I mispronounced your name, Prajay Patel. And Prajay, like many of the other artists in the stream, did several posters. And so right now, the one we're looking at is The Dark Knight. I like this movie a lot. I tried to not distract. I'm like, okay, I'll put in a Joker picture. It's fine. I don't want to get distracted during the stream by Christian Bale and his hotness. And so here we have Prajay's version of The Dark Knight. And again, it's like The Dark Knight is such a loud action movie. And it's so unusual to have it conveyed as a very silent moment. And I just love that the contrast in this is so low, because you don't see that very often. I think a lot of times people make the assumption that with movies, like, you have to have high contrast. But there's something about the subtlety of the gray and how it just slowly emerges out of the darkness, I think is really beautifully done. I think that was a great decision. It's hard to make something with so few shapes and such a limited range of value, but you did a really great job with that, Prajay. Yeah, they're saying so many movies to add remove to my list of movies that I never get around to watching. Yeah. Oh, wow. I pronounced your name correctly. I cannot believe that. Okay, very cool. And Anna's saying, it kind of makes me feel as if it's a noir movie and not an action one. Well, it sort of is in a way. I mean, if you think about the lighting and the shadows and everything, I just think this is a different take because it's not that like quick, fast-paced punching that we associate a lot of action movies to be about. Here is another film called San Andreas, and I never saw this movie either. I guess because not that excited about The Rock. I mean, he's fine, but I don't know. Maybe because I saw him for 2 minutes in Jumanji, and I just was like, oh God, get me out of here. But that was probably more the movie than it was The Rock. So I love Prajay. This is so wonderful. The way that you've built in the shape of the state of California. And then this is such a little detail, you guys, but I think it makes a really big difference. Do you see how the white line at the top, the little spaces, they're wider than the ones at the bottom? Again, such a small detail, but it's like when you're working with so few shapes and so few colors, design elements like that really carry a lot of weight. So I'm very excited to see that. Yeah, Prajay is saying kind of the vibe I was going for with the old Batman movies and TV show. Yeah, see, I'm not crazy. Moses is backing me up on Jumanji. Oh, well, see, here's the thing. If you know the original Chris Van Allsburg children's book, it just bums you out, like really, really big time. By the way, I just wanted to read to you guys a little bit about what Prajay says about how they approached making these posters. So they explain, I want to explore utilizing my scientific background, PhD in computational chemistry, into my artwork through incorporating different facets from science. Very cool. And here we have another person blending traditional media, markers, graphite, photo manipulation, digital to capture the contrast, colors, and textures. And Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy. I love this because really it does come down to that. Like that's all you need is just this one image. Even though it's all about funky aliens and space travel and everything, I think this is great. The other cool thing too is, do you guys notice here how guide is bigger than galaxy? And so that's such a great way, I think, to put emphasis on certain parts of the image, because it's almost like you don't really need hitchhikers to be that bold because the hand is taking care of that. And then that's just words in between. And so Prajay, I love that you highlighted those two words because that says to me that you're really making choices. You're not just sticking the text on there. You're actually making those decisions. Yeah, for sure. I think what Dara here is saying, such a good composition with the crossed elements. And then we also have the Star Trek film. Prajay, I hope this is the right Star Trek movie. There's so many of them. I was like, I think it's this one. So anyway, I'm sorry if I got the wrong movie. But anyway, I think we all know Star Trek. And wow, this one is so cool because don't you feel like you can feel the speed? That moment in the movies where they go, whoa, and it's like shooting through space. The fact that the S is so small and the K is so big that it's going off the page, that is fantastic because you get the sense of movement, you get your diagonals, the super dynamic composition. So really nice job on this. And then Contagion, which unfortunately a lot of us are relating to this movie now. And I think they said that this movie has actually not gotten popular, but a lot of people are watching it now, apparently because of the pandemic. But we have Prajay's version of Contagion. And so Prajay says one notable scientific element is the 2D schematic of the novel coronavirus in Contagion. And yeah, I had no idea about that. I mean, I'm like computational chemistry. I don't even know what that means because yeah, chemistry, I did not do well. Chemistry was like the one class I got a C in high school. Like I was fine. The other subject, not in chemistry. So I'm like, okay, yeah, that's not really something that I can comprehend, but so cool that you're a scientist and you're also making these artworks thinking about your scientific background at the same time. Yeah, this is a great comment. W315 says the green and red contrast with the glow. Yeah, that like really minor, like lime green touch behind the red. It's subtle. You don't see it right away, but I think it's wonderful. And Lisa H says the green looks ill. I know this is definitely like, green that makes you very, very uneasy. Great choice of colors. I just want to give a shout out to Tom G. Thank you so much for the super chat. We always appreciate your support, you guys, in order to keep our content 100% free. All right, we also have Inception. This was a cool movie. I mean, I really like Christopher Nolan. I mean, Leonardo DiCaprio, not as cute as he used to be, but that's okay. It was a cool movie, and I really enjoyed that. And this is really cool because that movie, again, like a lot of these other ones, is very loud and very fancy. And the fact that Projet whittled it down to this one object, I just think is great. Beautiful shading, by the way, like the way that the grays come downwards into the blacks, really, really beautiful pencil drawing technique. And then we also have You've Got Mail. This is a really old movie. Oh my goodness. What is this, from like the 90s or something? But anyway, we've got You've Got Mail, which probably is really out of date. I suspect the technology, well, you guys can see from Projet's poster, it definitely was a sign of the times. Remember when computers took up like your whole desk and they were all beige? And they've got the silly like one font that you could get on the computer. So I just love that. This is such a sign of the times. Like you really get a sense of when that movie was actually made. Okay, so the next artist we're going to look at, their name is Hannah Kumpula. I'm sorry, I can't say anybody's name correctly. But Hannah decided to do their movie poster based on Alfred Hitchcock's movie, The Birds. And this is a really great story. Hannah says that one day I was on my lunch walk. There was a huge amount of little birds flying above my head, and I knew which movie poster I would make. Now, the original poster, as Hannah explains, is like a terrified woman. There are all these birds attacking her. And so Hannah explains, I changed the perspective. The viewer is now above and behind the birds. The woman is pictured alone, terrified, about to be swallowed by, quote, the wave. And that Hannah also drew inspiration from M.C. Escher, tried to make the birds emerge from the blackness, but in a chaotic manner. Wow, this movie poster is so terrifying. And it's strange because you wouldn't think that a poster with some words and a couple of shapes could be so horrifying, but like those dripping stab-like red dagger shapes, oh my God, it's so intense and so minimal. Like I feel like Hannah, what you accomplished so well was just such a big impact with so little. And that, honestly, that really is the heart of this art there, is like how much of an impact, how much can you communicate in terms of information with the least amount of visuals possible? Really, really exciting. Yeah, we're getting a lot of really nice comments. Lady Penknife, who is Hannah, is live with us in the chat. Very cool. Gargi is saying so cool. Moses says beautiful. AKA says very well done. And Emma Chapman says awesome. Yeah, and the fact that they descend slowly into the darkness down to the lower right-hand corner, beautiful. And you know something? You guys have probably heard me say this before, but usually I don't like big white backgrounds. Most of the time, I think that they look empty. But I think, Hannah, this is beautifully utilized white background. Like that background really has a presence to it that I think is absolutely stunning. Okay, so the next artist we're going to look at is Beatriz Abu. Sorry if I can't pronounce anybody's name. I'm sorry, you guys. So Beatriz explains in their statement, these were the first posters I've ever designed. Biggest challenge was dealing with skill limitations. Beatrice explained, since I'm a beginner artist, accepting that I'm able to make does not match what I envisioned because of it, but not allowing this to prevent me from finishing all of them. Well, good for you, Beatrice, because you made a bunch of pieces. This is a movie called Crimson Peak, which I've actually never seen before. But again, it's like very small shifts. Like the fact that the text is gritty. Most of the time when you guys see this calligraphic font, it's usually very nice and clean and pretty. But the fact that it looks almost beat up in a way, I think was a really great choice, Beatrice. And so Beatrice explains, the first thing I did in my creative process was to think about the themes, choosing the movies. Then they did thumbnails, choose colors, and all that was left was finishing them. And Beatrice says, I picked the Vengeful Bride from Kill Bill, Red Shoes, and we'll look at The Shape of Water in a minute. So very broad range. And this, I think, is, I mean, I feel weird saying that Kill Bill is beautiful because it's not a beautiful movie at all. But I just think the blood spatters are funny because when you look at it on a dress, you just think, oh, it's this like pretty pattern. And then you realize, oh, wait, that's like a blood stains. It's like really, really upsetting. Yeah. And Dara is saying, I love the cutout of the Crimson Peak poster. And this is from The Shape of Water. Oh, this is a great movie. I just love the director. He's just phenomenal. I can't pronounce his name. Is it Guillermo Toro? I can't. Oh my God. So bad. Sorry, you guys. So anyway, look at this. So different from the way the poster was advertised, was like very dark and very atmospheric. And this is so almost playful and fun, which to me actually really accurately represents the relationship between the main character and the creature. And so this is what is also cool, is seeing that everybody has a different take on the same movie is just so much fun to see. So this is very unusual, so different. Yeah, like Lisa H is saying, Beatrice hitting these out of the park. John Murphy is a good movie. It's quirky. I mean, it might not be for everybody, but I happen to like films like that, so that's just me. And then Beatrice also did Annihilation. Never saw this movie either. Tell me in the chat if you guys have seen this. So this is Annihilation, and wow, so few colors, but beautiful textures. Like actually one of my favorite parts of this is, I suppose it's like the grass that the animal is within. And then I love the text. Oh my goodness. The text is obviously a font, but the thing is, again, like some of the others where the text is a little bit beat up and you're changing the opacity so parts of the letters come forward, other parts go backwards. Yeah, like W315 is saying very ethereal. And Eric is saying feels like watercolor, looks amazing. Yeah, beautiful piece. I've never heard of this movie either. This looks like a really quirky movie. It's called Hunt for the Wilder People. And this is a poster by Emma Chapman Lynn, who I believe is live with us in the chat. So say hello, Emma, if you are here. And so Emma explains that they watched Cabin in the Woods a few years back. That's actually the next poster we're going to look at. And so Emma explains in their statement that their first drafts illustrated the movies really literally, but they felt my final composition was more impactful, implied claustrophobia and the need to escape. And Emma explains, I had so much fun with the fonts, did a lot of trial and error until I had the ones I liked. And I think you guys can see really dynamic compositions. I mean, I love the text here. And honestly, you guys, that really was the part of the art dare that really got me excited, because I cannot tell you how often text is a problem in a lot of classrooms. Like 9 times out of 10 when I was teaching at RISD and somebody would bring in a project that had text on it, it was always the text that caused major problems for people. And I think you guys can see, looking at these posters would fall apart if you took away the text. Like the text is such a critical part of the way that Emma designed this, that you can't take that away. So yeah, like you guys see how you have the cabin at the top, and then I like how in and they're like moving with the perspective and planes of the building. And then woods almost feels like it's disintegrating in a way. So there's some minor things in here that you might not notice, but they're really fantastic. Yeah, like Moon Sparks is saying the perspective is magnificent. And Raindrops says the limited color palette is great. Great color choices. It matched everything. And Lady Penknife says, I love the cabin in the woods. Really good, Emma. And John Murph says, I love how creative they all are. And Soy Tainley says there's some great work in this art dare. Yeah, I mean, you guys really pushed yourselves, and I think it was great to see so many variations. I mean, that's what's so cool about these is no matter how many people do it, it's like we always have a different version that we can get excited about. All right, guys, you ready? We have 2 winners to announce. We have an honorable mention, and we also have a prize. But I have to say, you guys, I'm thrilled. Every day, the art dares, I've explained to you before, it's like Christmas morning for me. I just get to like open all these presents. It's just so much fun. Our honorable mention winner is Rose Weisberg for doing all of their posters. Rose did the Soylent Green, the Wrist Cutters, the Us, Terminal. I mean, Rose, you did so much work for this. And every single poster was so unique and different, not just in terms of the visuals, but also in the construction. Like, I love that Rose used rubber stamps, gouache, digital, Illustrator, Photoshop. I mean, it's like, what did you not use, Rose? So brilliant pieces, really terrific combinations that you came up with, Rose. Our prize winner is Hannah Kumpula. I'm sorry if I mispronounced your name, but we were just floored by this design, Hannah. We thought it was just so well composed. It really captured the story in such a brilliant manner, impeccable technique. We just thought you did an amazing job, Hannah. So great job with this, you guys. Great job to everybody who worked on this art dare. I mean, my art teacher soul just surges whenever we do these art dare videos because I feel so proud of everybody. Because you know what's funny about being a teacher? Maybe some of you guys are teachers know this, but when your students make work, you feel like you made it too. I know that sounds really weird, and I'm not trying to take credit for anybody's hard work, but that's like how much it means to me when I see you guys producing all this stuff. It's just really wonderful to see. Now, remember, the October Art Dare still going on. We have about 1 more week left. I know a lot of you guys are hard at work, and this is a tough one because you're getting something every day. But remember, you don't have to do every word. You could do 1 word, you could do 15, you could do all of them. Doesn't matter. I think the whole point of these art dares is a place for you guys to play, to experiment. So check that out. Remember, if you want to submit, tag us at art.prof and use hashtag #ArtProfShare. ArtProfDare, sorry. We have too many hashtags. ArtProf has a podcast. It's available on Spotify and also on iTunes. I will be hanging out in the ArtProf Discord. Please meet me in the post live streams channel where we can all talk more about the experience, talk about all the entries, and just hang out. So much fun to chat with you guys. Subscribe to our channel and join the ArtProf family. And thank you to our top Patreon supporters who keep us up and running. Thank you to everybody for supporting each other, for participating in the community, working so hard. Everybody, thank you so much. I'll see you next time. Bye-bye.